Hello, welcome back to my little mini-series on exploring the Chek Exercise Coach Training Program. In part one, we went over the principle of progressive integration, and I just gave you a brief overview of what the Chek Exercise Coach Program was all about. Today, in part two, we're going to look at the principle of isolation to integration, and we'll build upon the previous model that we did in part one, where I talked about progressive integration, which was the importance of following the flexibility, stability, strength, power development plan. As a side note, much of what I'm referring to can be found in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and for a more comprehensive approach to some of these concepts, you can look at my book, The Golf Biomechanics Manual. Don't be worried about the title if you're not a golf person who likes to play or has an interest in golf. The approaches I take in there are applicable to any human being, any athlete, because first, before any sport, you've got to get the body into a state of functional readiness. So, in many ways, the Golf Biomechanics Manual takes you deeper than this book into getting yourself musculoskeletally fit. So there's more tests and approaches in there. Now, what I want to talk about today, to move past what we discussed last time, is the concept of isolation to integration. Now, when I used to be in the 82nd Airborne Division, my job was to repair weapon systems on Cobra helicopters, and as you can imagine, they're very, very complex electronic systems, and there's a lot to learn. So one of the things they taught us in electronics school is the concept of sectionalize, then localize. When you're working on a helicopter, which is like a body, it has many, many comprehensive systems that all must interact with each other. The first thing you got to do is sectionalize. What is the largest region that is expressing the problem? So an example of sectionalizing would be, is the problem the musculoskeletal system, such as neck pain, thoracic spine problems, lumbar problems, or is it the visceral system, the glands and the organs? Now, there's other systems, but I want to keep it simple for time's sake. So, for example, if we identify that we have, say, a neck or a back problem, that is the section of the body. Now what we've got to do is identify what other subsystems may be involved in that imbalance. That's when we get into localizing. Now, localizing can be, for example, if you have lumbar dysfunction, as a therapist, I have to identify exactly what is the problem and where in the lumbar spine is it. The most commonly injured section of the human spine is L5-S1, where the last vertebra of the lumbar spine sits on top of the sacrum because it carries the most weight relative to other segments, and it integrates the lower and the upper halves of the body. So any imbalances above or below tend to meet right there and lead to chronic problems. So we've localized now to L5-S1, but we still have not identified what other local factors, or even what other, shall we say, regional or global factors might be involved. If you go to page 121 in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, not only is there a whole chapter on the core, which teaches you specific tests to isolate what might the imbalances be in the tonic phasic muscle system, as we talked about last time, but this chart here on page 121, called the piano spine diagram, shows you exactly which nerves or sections of the spine integrate with which of your glands and organs, and that way you can easily correlate potential diet and lifestyle stressors with the structural problem. So my low back hurts now becomes, do I have a problem with my colon, kidney, prostate, testicles, uterus, ovaries, or bladder? Because those all can cause pain and disrupt the motor control of the lumbar spine for reasons that are too complex to explain here, but I do explain them very clearly, as do my instructors in your training program. Okay? So once we go to localize, we're looking at the specific challenge of the organ, gland, or joint complex. As I showed before, it's very, very common to have these structural imbalances, and for example, we can apply the isolate and integrate principle by saying, okay, if someone has increased lumbar, thoracic, and cervical curves, or what's typically called a lower cross and an upper cross syndrome, many of these people, given the right exercises, find that their posture improves as long as they're doing the exercises, but as soon as they stop doing the exercises, everything starts to collapse. That's a very common finding, and I dealt with that challenge as a therapist who owned a physical therapy clinic for many, many years, which drove me to say there must be something I'm missing, and that's when I really began to explore the neurological and physiological relationships of other body systems. So what we see, for example, is if somebody's core, their inner unit systems, the deep abdominal wall is dysfunctional, that almost always comes with dysfunctional glands and organs because the pumping and the support of those organs is disrupted as the core becomes disrupted. So then you have to go back here to look at these correlations. But as I said, if you have localized your pain to the lumbar spine, you still now have to isolate it, and checking the inner functions of the core and all of the inner systems, such as the rotator cuff, the hip stabilizers, any of the inner unit systems, will then give us a specific indication of where we need to isolate our conditioning and or for-doctor efforts. What is your dream or your motive to do the program? How is your level of rest relative to actual need? How much movement are you doing? What kind of movement are you doing? And how are you feeding this body? And is your diet adequate to nourish a rehabilitation process or a recovery process? So in summary then, basic concept, first sectionalize, what's the big problem? Then localize, where's the big problem coming from? Remember, it's not always as easy as it looks. Back pain may be a symptom of many, many other problems, such as digestive and eliminative disorders and mental emotional stress, for which there are volumes of books written on and you learn a lot about in the Chek Advanced Training programs. So thanks for joining me today for part 2 of exploring the Chek Exercise Coach Training, and we will come back soon with part 3, where we will look at one more of those useful principles that can guide our decision-making process. For more resources, you can look at my last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need multimedia ebook, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, the Golf Biomechanics Manual, Scientific Core Conditioning, Scientific Back Training, and Program Design Correspondence courses are all extremely helpful to prepare you for the more comprehensive exercise coach training. See you soon.